1864, John Riley Williams, the third son of John Williams, enlisted in the Union Army, along with his good friend, James Pemberton. James Lewis and John Riley did not see any battles while they were in service. But John Riley died of camp disease, that was chronic diarrhea. He died at the hospital, which later became Jefferson Barracks, Missouri. He died here March 5th, 1865, which was just 1 month before the Civil War officially ended. So, in 1965, Lee surrendered Grant. That was General Lee, commander of the Confederate Army, surrendered to General USS Grant at Appomattox, Virginia. We've been there too. It's interesting that the remnants of the Missouri Brigade did not surrender until May of that. The war was over in April. They didn't surrender until May of 1865. And by the end of that month, by the end of May, the rest of the Confederate forces had surrendered. In the meantime, what was left of the Missouri Brigade, in some way got down to the Mobile, Alabama area and participated in a battle there the day that the official ending of the war at Appomattox. All those things happened in a period of about 4 years. Then, after the war, John Williams lived with his brothers in Arkansas, raised 1 or 2 crops before he returned to Missouri. And at some point during or after the war, partisan guerrillas on one side or the other burned down his home, so it was not safe for him to return home immediately. Now, I have just a few notes here in summary of what I have said. John Williams concerns the tragic life of John Williams. Think about that. All the things that happened to him, sad things. He lived such a tragic life from 1859 to the late 1860s that a Hollywood screenwriter would be reluctant to include all of it for fear of creating a character too far-fetched to believe. To begin with, you had a successful slave-owning farmer in Grace County, Kentucky, who sells everything and moves his entire family by wagon train in pioneer fashion to Missouri. Here he buys undeveloped prairie land on which to build a new life. His wife dies in childbirth shortly after arrival, but the family carries on. Within a couple of years, Civil War breaks out, and John and his 2 eldest sons join the Confederate forces. I have no doubt they thought a 1-year commitment would be all, but they soon realized that they were there essentially for the duration of the war. Within the span of the war, he loses his daughter-in-law, that was son Wade Alexander's wife. Then his younger son, Clifford B., was killed in the Battle of Champion Hill near Vicksburg, Mississippi. Next year, his eldest son, Wade Alexander, was killed in the gruesome Battle of Franklin, Tennessee. And this was in the last major battle of the Western Theater of War. And this, of course, after the 2 sons had been wounded once, captured twice, and properly exchanged in prisoner swaps of the 2 governments. John Williams survived the war, but could not return home immediately because of the internecine warfare going on in Missouri. After a year or two with relatives in Arkansas, he returns home to find his house burned down. A third son had died in the last year of the war, having joined the dreaded Yankee Army. And to add further insult, his daughter Fanny married another federal soldier, James Pemberton, with whom his son John Riley had joined the Federal Army. So in a few short years, we have John Williams going from a successful farmer with a large family, full of promise for the future, and into possible poverty. The three of his sons lost in the war, not to mention the death of his own wife and baby daughter, as well as the wife of his son, Wade Alexander. His home is burned down. His life is threatened by the lawless guerrillas who roam the countryside. And he also loses the value of his slaves, if not their actual services. All said, it is far more hardships than most people have to deal with in their entire lifetime. His family name survives only because he raises the orphan son, Ben, of his eldest son, Wade Alexander. It is this grandson who eventually produces the only male descendants of the family. Intertwined through the years is the background story of the fathering of children with slaves, or former slaves, by John and his grandson, Ben. Descendants of these children live on, carrying Williams' genetic material, if not the family name. Despite these hardships, he managed to endure, rebuild his home, become a successful farmer again, and live to the rather ripe old age of 80 years. And now, 150 years later, white descendants still own some of the land that he purchased in the late 1850s. That's the end of my story. I consulted with various books, Civil War in the Ozarks by Philip Steele and Steve Buckell, Champion Hill, Timothy Smith, and Eyewitness to the Civil War, published by the National Geographic, by the way, in 2007. And Atlas of the Civil War is released in December of 2008 by the National Geographic. Then other sources include years of research by Barbara Jewell Pemberton and her correspondence with such people as Roberta Jenkins, Sue Steen Cates, Janet Steen, Peggy Hay, maybe Nancy Thompson, and other researchers from coast to coast. I thank you for listening. That's the end of my
how about, can we get all of the descendants of Fanny up here, and all the descendants of Suki